I'd like to recognize Professor Ali Riaz, Distinguished Professor, the Department of Politics and Government at Illinois State University. Professor Riaz previously held the Thomas E. Ironman Professorship. His research interests include democratization, violent extremism, political Islam, South Asian politics, and of course, Bangladeshi politics. He's held the University Professor designation and was chair of the Department of Politics at Illinois State University. He's a non-resident senior fellow of the Atlantic Council and currently the president of the American Institute of Bangladesh Studies. So over to you, Dr. Riaz.
Thank you, John. This has been an excellent last hour listening to such esteemed colleague who have extensive experience of conducting and supervising elections as well as being in Bangladesh. One thing that is evident in this panel that everyone at some point or other have been engaged in electoral process in Bangladesh as an observer or as someone who facilitated or in some ways or other. Today, what I'm going to talk and three things that I would like to highlight, and some of the things particularly thanks to Jeff Vaness for bringing up in his last conversation. Let me tell you what are the three things that I'm going to talk about. The first thing is what exactly is electoral integrity that we are talking about, or at least in my judgment, what we should be talking about. What are the challenges of electoral integrity in case of Bangladesh that we witness? And the third point is what is the current situation going forward to the 2024 election. To me, then I guess in this respect, I am going to somewhat disagree with Jeff Vaness. Credibility, for a credible election, when we are talking about electoral integrity, I see four things that are essential for electoral integrity, irrespective of the result. And here I'm a process guy. I'm insisting on the process on four elements that needs to be looked into. And in any case, whether in case of Bangladesh or Nepal or for that matter in the United States, that to the principal element of the electoral process or the integrity are four things: are inclusiveness, transparency, accountability, and competitiveness. Why am I insisting on these things? Because these four things, when we are talking about inclusiveness, I'm not talking about the political parties, just by the fact one of our speakers have insisted on this, Brigadier Shikot, about the participatory, and then, of course, he did mention about the stakeholders, particularly the voters. When I'm talking about inclusiveness, it is not only in terms of the political parties, but it is with regard to the voters. As Brigadier Shikot has mentioned, whether they can freely go to polling station and come back and spend the night at home. There would not be a knock at the door in the middle of the night and disappear or being raped or humiliated next day. That guarantee, that is the inclusiveness part of it. That whether the voters, and in this respect, despite the fact that people might not be able to define what a good election, and Jeff might have found people say, if I'm not winning, then the election is controversial. But this is also true in case of Bangladesh, that these have been used as an opportunity to send a message to those who are incumbent. I tend to say that in case of Bangladesh, if there is an opportunity, what does actually Bangladeshi voters do when they have their inclusive election? The first thing is that they speak out in the sense that they actually send a message to the incumbent in a very simple manner and somewhat in a very simplistic manner. I tend to say that actually nobody won the election in Bangladesh, always incumbent lost, because this is their way of making an accountable system. Given the absence of other institutions, which has not been strong in case of Bangladesh, and particularly it has not been, it has, let me put it this way, particularly what has been decimated over the last decade in order to practically create confidence on individual. This inclusiveness part is this. So is it clear to Bangladeshis what inclusiveness and election means? Yes. My own understanding of working on Bangladesh, talking to people on an ethnographic basis, and most importantly, if we look at every election, what it does, the inclusiveness actually makes sure that they can speak out. And in most cases, they've spoken out against the incumbent. Doesn't matter. They could have, if they have the opportunity, if the incumbent had done better. I don't know, they might have. And possibly if there's continued elections, there would have been, the incumbent would have returned. But the point is, this is, do they know what the actual election, good election means? Good election means that they can speak out. They can, that's why whether it is about winning or losing, that's not the point. The second point is transparency. And in this respect, there's no disagreement with the panelists, and I'm sure everyone agrees on that. Election is not a day thing. Election is about a process, in the sense that there are before the election, pre-electoral period. What do you mean by pre-electoral period? It varies. It varies from country to country. In case of United States, as I see it, we're in a perennial cycle of election. Every day is an election. 365 days, every year is an election day. Because we have this 2 years election, 4 years election, local election is continued. But in case of Bangladesh, the pre-electoral period is a period where we would know that precisely the political process towards the election has started. In most cases, I would say, somewhat at the midterm of any incumbent, about 2.5 years later. First 2 years is basically a honeymoon period. In all instances, that has been the case. Honeymoon period goes out, pre-electoral period starts. But more so in recent years, what we have seen is basically election commission's understanding, and a very erroneous understanding of election commission, that as if the pre-electoral period is when the schedule is declared. No, it is not. Actually, election period has started. If the election commissioners have forgotten, they should just read out the newspapers. If they are not willing to read anything, they should watch television. The Prime Minister has been asking to vote her party for last more than 6 months. If that is not an electoral process, what is a pre-electoral process? If a party leader can actually ask, using the state apparatuses, for a vote for a political party, then if that is not pre-electoral period, either they're in a hibernation or someone has become Rip Van Winkle in election commission. The third element is, with respect to this pre-electoral campaign, the campaign has started. The polling day is the third element of this issue, as we see that it is not a single day, and of course the aftermath. With respect to aftermath, it is not only about conflict or violence, but most importantly of overseeing that the counting, the acceptability has grown. So as I say, the inclusiveness, the second part is this transparency part. And this is where we see the lack of transparency that we have been witnessing. Previously, at least 4 occasions, they have done a little bit better than others. And that includes, thanks to Dr. Brigadier Shekau, who is here, who have been part of the 2008 election process. Accountability mechanism is the one. Can we hold this electoral process, these individuals who are actually running for the offices? Is there a way of accountability? And of course, the competitiveness. 153 being elected. Legally, yes, right. Of course, all of us know legally, yes, it was right. Morally, absolutely not. Morally, you know why? Because as a matter of fact, according to Bangladesh Constitution, one interpretation would be the election of 2014, the rest of the election shouldn't have taken place and didn't need to be taken place. 153 is a majority who can actually form the government. And you could have a government without casting a single vote. So that is where I say that what I mean by electoral integrity is on this issue, on the transparency, accountability, inclusiveness, and competitiveness. Those are the indicators. And in this respect, I humbly disagree with Jeff Van Ness when he says 2008, post-2008 is the situation that we are witnessing. This is not a causal relationship. 2008 election didn't create. It has not caused it. The the reason of the authoritarianism that we have witnessed and the rise of the hybrid regime, as I have tried to explain in my book in 2019, immediately after 2018 election, has been, and it is not only Bangladesh is not an exception. Electoral process are being used by would-be autocrats. But what happens thereafter is the peeling off of the accountability mechanism. And we have witnessed that effort in the United States by Donald Trump to do so. Fortunately, the US system and the institutions were strong enough, not as strong as I thought it would have been. They have been able to rebuff this effort of an would-be autocrat to manage and practically rebuffed it and saved the democracy for the day, at least for the day. We don't know what will happen. And that's why the causal relationship that is being drawn with 2008 election and the subsequent authoritarian tendency of the government. Rather, let us look at how it has been done. What other mechanisms have been used, not only in case of Bangladesh, in case of the Turkey Erdogan, or in case Viktor Orban's in Hungary. So my point is that, with respect to this, the results, what the situation that we are in case of Bangladesh is not a result of 2008's fair election. Fair election has produced a parliament, and the Bangladeshi political culture might have prevented, and it's not the first time that actually post 2008 election that opposition had started to boycott. Let us not forget that previously, in another occasion, after another situation, almost 143, if I'm not wrong, parliament members did resign. They were the opposition, led by, at that point, among other political parties, the Awami League was that part, Jamaat Islami was part of this. And the day I recall is the resignation submitted by no other than a person who is now dead, and who was the only single member of his party. He led this whole process of resignation, making a dysfunctional parliament. So the electoral integrity issues need to be seen in this way. The second point, the challenges to the electoral integrity.
Ali, if you can just wrap up in the next couple of minutes. Thanks.
Sure. The second thing is the challenge to electoral integrity is that basically 2 points that have come up. One is the constitutional arrangement. There was a reasonably good constitutional arrangement. We are not saying perfect, the reasonably good, which was the caretaker system, which Shakur Hussain has mentioned, which has been removed, which created this situation. So within this legal arrangement, this constitutional legal arrangement that we have seen was intended to do so. I don't think it was an accident. I don't think there was any other intention of the regime at that point to make sure, with respect to the 15th Amendment. The 15th Amendment itself, its constitutionality is questionable. That's why the challenge at this point is this electoral integrity is basically, with respect to the constitutional part, is this. The third, what is the current situation? Nurul Kabir has explained it quite well. At this point, what we know for sure, that there cannot be, without the lack of the institution, there cannot be a free and fair election under the current regime. Why? Because of the politicization that Brigadier Shakur mentioned. But most importantly, the point is what Nurul Kabir has brought up, the cost of defeat. The cost of defeat for regime, its loyalists, its supporters have become so high. And that is why it seemed to me that one way of guaranteeing an exit to this, if there has to be any conversation, that has to include whether a post-election situation can be created based on rule of law, not rule by law, that, and with the independence of judiciary, that nobody would be actually unduly persecuted. If there is a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which can be supervised by the international community, can be done, that might actually pave the way in some ways, or at least create an incentive for the government, because I agree with Nurkovic that the current regime is afraid how they would be dealt with, especially given that they dealt with. So this is the situation that what we see as going forward. Recent events since the confrontations that we have seen, the violence that has been perpetrated, and subsequently the persecution that we are witnessing with respect to the opposition, is a message from the government. It is a clear message. If that was not heard by anyone, they have made it with this, what they call the sound grenade. The grenades that was lobbed and sounded made it very clear what would be the election look like. Despite the fact that there is a clear consensus. And where is the clear consensus? If not nothing else, let me pick up the recent most IRI survey. 44% people have said they reinstate the caretaker government. 25% said that there should be a unity government. What does that mean? 69% people have said under this system, under this government, there cannot be a free and fair election. Period. There is no other way to put it. Either government would listen to it, or they can simply wait to see. At that point, let me finish with this. There is a role of the international community at this moment. Given it is very clear, they should be engaged more with respect to having, call it dialogue, call it mediated, negotiated settlement. Otherwise, there would be what is coming is not uncertain. In some ways, it is certain that the conflict and acrimony is going to cost Bangladesh quite dearly. Who will bear the brunt? It is the people who will bear the brunt, not the ruling elites. Let me finish there. Thank you.